Over the past few years, DairyNZ has been following 4 West Coast monitor farms from Westport in the north to Hokitika in the south. This week we're visiting 2 properties, Andrew and Nikki Murphin's Gunsight Farms at Ikamatua and Landcorp's Kotuku Farm.
The monitor farm project was started almost 3 years ago now. There was the focus farm at Kotuku for the 3 years prior to that. But one of the things that came out was that there's quite a lot of variation across the coast in terms of microclimates and the type of farms that are being operated. So what we decided to do was go to the 4 monitor farms, spread them throughout the coast and with different farming systems that they were operating to try and appeal and get more people involved in pasture monitoring and benchmarking themselves with these farms. The properties that we've got are quite a range. Some of them are more recent conversions, whereas others are in more traditional dairying areas around Westport and also Hokitika and have been developed over a longer period of time. What we're trying to determine is, first of all, how much grass is grown in the different areas of the West Coast and link that back to how much of that is being utilised. So we know that it's wet on the coast and so we can grow pasture, but can we actually get the cows to eat it and then produce the milk production? So that's one of the things, and I guess what we're trying to do is by using the monitor farms to demonstrate how they can improve their decision making, encourage more farmers to actually take up the practice of regular farm walking and monitoring on their own properties and using that to inform their regrassing and their fertiliser decisions and some of those farm management practices. With the benchmarking, we're doing it at physical level on the farm, so looking at the pasture grown and utilised, what the milk production per cow and per hectare is, what supplements are coming in, but we're also looking at benchmarking in a financial basis as well. So the 4 farms that are involved are on the dairy-based system that DairyNZ manages, and so at all the field days we can look at, well, where are the costs coming in these different farms, and maybe identify some areas that those farms can target, and also give an opportunity for the farmers that come along to compare what they're seeing on those farms with their own operations.
Kotuku Farm is one of the units making up Landcorp's Weka complex. The 455 effective hectare property was converted to dairying 8 years ago. It's currently milking about 1,100 cows.
As far as fertiliser inputs go, we're very high on the nitrogen usage. That's still currently up around 270 units of N a year. Now that's come back from where it was in the first couple of years of development. With phosphate, we're currently on a maintenance program in that regard, and then with sulphur and also potassium, that's a sort of small amounts often, and that goes across all of our nutrients, and we're just trying to keep everything in that optimum level at all times. We're probably around that 11 tonne. A good year we're probably 11.5. That's full pasture grown. Utilisation is around 85%, and a good year we'll get to 87. I think the key for us is to try and grow more grass and get to around that 14 tonne, and with that we dilute our costs. So many of our costs are fixed, so more milk solids. We've built fertility and organic matter. The next step is to ensure that, you know, as the grasses run out, that we're not being compromised on that front. And we're looking at different forage crops. We get hit with manuka beetle at the moment, so we're looking at fescues and also straight swords of plantain, and just putting them in the areas where we can, you know, overcome that manuka beetle damage, and that'll allow us to grow more grass.
The farm we're on at the moment, we're in the Upper Grey Valley at Andrew and Nikki Murphin's farm at Ikamatua. The Grey Valley's got quite a large number of dairy farms in it, and when we were setting up, the view was that there was quite a big difference between the lower end of the valley and the upper end of the valley, so that's why we've got the farm here at Ikamatua and down at Kotuku. This farm, out of the 4 monitor farms, has the highest pasture growth, total annual production, and also gets the highest peak growth as well during the season. I think the key factors is that it's more developed soils than what we saw at Kotaku, so been under pasture for a longer time. So good pasture species and strategic use of nitrogen. Andrew's adopted the little and often approach to nitrogen fertiliser, so really feeding the plants throughout the season. I guess having a centre pivot on a West Coast farm was not something that I thought about when I first started this project, but I guess what the project has highlighted is, although it's the West Coast, we see huge variation in the total amount of rainfall, but also the distribution of rain across the farm. So for this farm here, it probably is the most vulnerable in terms of early summer and summer dry. And with the production that Andrew and Nikki are aiming for, they need to have that consistent supply of feed coming through, so can understand fully why they've looked at this as an option.
Sheep and beef till 15 years ago, and then we started off with the first dairy conversion. It was always a fattening property with pretty good fertility and pastures and that. Last season, about 280 effective. There was 700 cows at Christmas and 2 runoffs of about 35 hectares, yeah, and a bit of lease ground for the winter. You just sort of got to be 3 weeks in front of yourself all the time. As I've been on the monitored project, you get every Monday we get the guff emailed through, and it's a pretty good tool, you know. It's about 3 hours to walk the farm, and yeah, just keep ahead of yourself all the time there. Yeah. If you can see a hole coming or a surplus coming, do something about it before you've actually got it.
I guess the aim of the project is not to come up with a template, because there's so much variation in, well, the physical conditions, the soils, the rainfall, those sorts of things, but also in the systems that the people want to operate. So I guess what we're trying to do with the project by having a range of farms is demonstrate the principles that are important, so that the people can pick up on those principles and then apply them to their own particular situations, rather than saying, well, this is the recipe for the West Coast, and expect everybody to go and adopt that recipe.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.